Hi, this is Carl the Cobra Frutch, and you're watching Lights Out.
The monster, David Benavidez, puts on an absolute grueling performance in Riyadh as he retains his light heavyweight titles by beating the beast Anthony Yarde. What next for David Benavidez? Could we be looking at a potential undisputed fight against Dimitri Bivol? Or has he got his sights set on a world title at Cruiserweight? We'll be discussing everything that went down last weekend in Riyadh. This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law, and this is podcast 87 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast. With me, as always, delighted to be joined by my good friend and my right-hand man, Mr. Mohsin Gulshir, aka Ron, who I may have to pre-warn you is in a pretty pissed off mood as he's just seen Man United get humbled at home to a 10-man Everton side. But I managed to calm him down. Suicide is a lot less likely now, so we take our time with him today. Ron, welcome to the show. How are you, bud?
Not too bad, not too bad. It could have been worse. I could be a Liverpool supporter. Was it six defeats this season now after winning the title last season? I worry about those guys. So I think if my life's bad, just imagine being a Liverpool supporter.
But you hit the nail on the head. League champions until it's mathematically over. Don't you
Yeah.
forget it. Before we get started, we would just like to remind everybody out there, if you haven't already, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell for more Lights Out Boxing content. Check us out on all of our social media platforms. Links are below. And if you want to listen to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, again, the link is below in the description. The podcast will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and all of your other favorite audio platforms. Ron, as I mentioned, we are coming off the back of a great weekend in Riyadh. But as always, we're going to kickstart today's podcast. So if you're okay and you're in the right frame of mind, mate, fire away with a quick fire question. Let's have it.
Simple. What's your favorite division in boxing?
Of all time or just right now?
Just generally, if you had to pick a division, that was you would say is your favorite division, weight class, weight category in boxing. What would be it?
It's always going to be the heavyweights, isn't it?
Hmm.
You can't have a boxing conversation without talking about the heavyweights, in my opinion. Simply because of obviously the era we grew up in. We were both privileged enough to have been born in the 90s era when I thought the heavyweights were on a complete different level. Now, I can't say the same for the 70s and the 80s because we weren't around, but you only look at the names that come out of that division, you know that the 70s and the 80s was probably better than the 90s and the current era that we're in. But I would say definitely the heavyweights. I'm a huge fan of the welterweight division of the past welterweight division. But yeah, for me, it's always the heavyweights. Good one though. I like that. Nice and simple, as you said. What about you? What's your favorite division?
I've always liked the smaller guys. The 147s, the 154s, the middleweights, the super middleweights. Yeah, that kind of division. Something. Obviously, I look at my size and think about if I was a boxer, which category I'd be in, and thinking I'd be in with the likes of Golovkin, and that kind of makes me reconsider my life choices. So I'm glad I'm not in the ring facing those kind of monsters. But anyway.
I know you personally. I think you'd stand out more as a flyweight or a strawweight. Don't know
Oh
about.
gosh. I'm 70 kg. I don't think I'd be I'm not draining myself to get to flyweight, strawweight anytime soon.
If the money's right, though, I mean, does it make sense for you?
Oh gosh, mate. I don't know. I've seen what was a movie I've seen recently about cutting weight and stuff. It
I
was
remember you telling me about this.
Orlando Bloom, and I saw that, and I would, really, really, really think about this. This what boxers put themselves through just to make weight. Let alone, be ready for the fight. It's just making weight is such a demanding strain on the body and the mind. And I mean, we'll hear a lot more about it as time goes on. We'll find out what happened with Chris Eubank. Hopefully, I hope he's well. People mentioned about the weight loss, but yeah. But anyway, I'm 147 and the 154 division. That's my favorite division in boxing.
Well, hopefully the viewers will give us their thoughts on what their favorite
Mhm.
division in boxing is. But a very good question, nice and simple, and we look forward to next week's quick fire. And as I mentioned, we're coming off the back end of we're coming off the back of a phenomenal weekend again in Riyadh. We saw four brilliant world title fights, and we'll start off with the main event. David Benavidez battering Anthony Yarde and retaining his WBC light heavyweight title in what was a really impressive performance from David Benavidez. Ron, there were some good, impressive performances on the night, but would you say that was probably the best out of the lot?
Absolutely. In that fashion as well. Um, Anthony Yarde, that's his third time unlucky now. Going for a world title, fighting elite level fighters. Benavidez, there were some question marks whether, he was able to take his power up to light heavyweight. And I think he proved a lot of doubters wrong with that performance. What did you make of that 18 punch combination of was it left hooks or the right hooks?
Yeah.
Or I can't remember what it was, but was
Towards the end
that,
of the fourth round,
I think so. I mean, but wasn't that illegal? I mean, the referee was, I mean, he had one of his arms held and he just was kind of punching him continuously.
I thought
But
it didn't look right. I was thinking to myself, watching it back at some point, I would have expected the referee to sort of like intervene and stop what was going on. Um, Not nice, obviously, to watch. It fucking looked painful as hell because Benavidez carries a lot of destructive, explosive power.
he
Um,
did, yeah.
but on the night, I think the golfing class really showed, and I'm not taking nothing away from Anthony Yarde. He's only lost to the best fighters in the division, and these are powerful,
Mm,
explosive, hard-hitting men. He's 28 years old now, David Benavidez. He's a two-weight world champion. And he's just one of those fighters that is entering the prime years of his career. And I thought I thought the first few rounds he wasn't as good as I expected him to be. But I think there was damage to the orbital as well, one of the orbitals of Anthony Yarde. And I think once that punch landed and we saw Anthony Yarde started to struggle, he lost a lot of blood as well. That's
mm,
when it just become really, really one-sided. What really impressed me most about Benavidez was is I think after round four onwards, he could have ended that fight at any point, but he sort of took his time and he didn't rush looking for the knockout. He kind of knew in the back of his head that he could end the fight when he really wanted to. Anthony Yarde had a brilliant opportunity, I think, at the end of round three or four where he buzzed him and he didn't sort of, continue. He didn't sort of jump on it. But listen, man, there's a big golfing class and Benavidez is a strong, powerful hitter and wherever he campaigns next, whether it's at 175 pounds or it's up at cruiserweight, is a different story. But Ron, this is a guy, like I said, that's 28 years old right now. He's beating the likes of Gvozdyk, Demetrius Andrade, Dave Morrell, now Anthony Yarde. He's been world champion at two weights. He's called for the Canelo fight. He's called for the Bivol fight. If you are the representatives of Canelo, Bivol, or even better, Biev, is this a matchup you'd want to make as a fan or as a promoter?
as a fan, 100%. I'd love to see him in the ring with those big hitters. Um, there's rumors that Canelo avoided him. He didn't want that, heat. From what I'm hearing, he's going to move up in weight. He's going to move up to cruiserweight, and he's going to look to target Zerdo Ramirez for the cruiserweight title. So, oh, look, he's box office, isn't he? And that performance kind of put him in that limelight for, and he deserves all the credit he gets. There was just some questions whether he was able to carry that power, but he kind of demonstrated it in that seventh, eighth round that he was really getting to him. I just want to kind of touch on a little bit on Anthony Yarde.
Hmm.
Didn't quite understand his game plan in that fight. He was quite standoffish, wasn't engaging as much. I don't know whether he was hoping to get him in the second half of the fight. What did you make of the his tactics? Did you think he got it all wrong, or was he just gun shy, or what do you think?
I mean, that's what the third world title shot he's had.
Yeah,
The performances against Kovalev and Beterbiev were a lot better than this one. I mean, look, he fought Beterbiev, and Beterbiev was what, 36, 35. Kovalev was at the end of his career. I think he's just come up against a younger and a hungrier fighter who's in his peak years. I think that's all it is. And I think he felt the power probably earlier on and thought, yes, this is a different ball game. And as I mentioned, there were fights with Beterbiev and Kovalev, but they're fighters who fought Yard at the sort of final stages of their career. I mean, I know Beterbiev's coming off the back of two undisputed fights, and we don't know what's going on with him next. However, I wouldn't say gun shy, and I'm not going to talk about game plan because I didn't see much from Anthony Yarde that showed me that there was some sort of a game plan. I just think on the night he's come up against a fighter who is just a killer at that division, who's got some destructive power, who's really good at his craft, and was just a better fighter overall. I don't know about game plan, Ron. I really can't tell you. I mean, what was there a game plan from what you saw? Because I didn't see much of a game plan. It was just
no.
I know I mentioned he had like a moment of success where I thought, okay, now jump on
Mm,
him, but apart from that, there was nothing. So was there a game plan? I don't think there was, mate.
mm. Yeah, it's a shame. You'd think that this is his, third chance that he would have kind of thrown his all into it. But I guess it's easier said than done. He was outclassed, he was outpowered by a very strong, opposition. So with Benavidez, but Benavidez has got that tall, lanky frame as well. Those punches with intentions, man, with bad intentions. You can
Hmm.
hear them, and it was. I think the stoppage was right as well. I think he'd taken far too much in that fight. But look, what do you reckon is the future for Anthony Yarde from this point onwards? Third title fight. Do we see him at world level again, or do we see him with a domestic clash with the Boatzis? Or what happens? I mean, in the light heavyweights, where do you put it? Where do you rank him in the British on the British scene, let alone forget the world level?
Well, I don't think there'll be another world title shot, unless belts become vacant and Bivol Beterbiev and Ramirez go elsewhere, which I can't see happening anytime soon. However, I don't think Anthony Yarde should retire because there's still
No.
unfinished business on the British domestic scene, and two fights I really want to see is the Josh Buatsi fight and the Callum Smith fight. They generate a lot of money. They put a lot of bums on seats, and more importantly, they're good fights as well. They're not crap fights. These are very good fights. I mean, these are fights that could potentially headline the O2, or you could put on a Riyadh season card wherever. So no, I don't think Anthony Yarde should walk away from the sport. I still think he's got a lot to offer. However, I do feel those British fights are kind of the level where he's at, and this isn't me discrediting Anthony Yarde. I'm a big fan. I think Anthony Yarde's had a very good career. I mean, this is a guy that's only had 12 amateur fights run. He wasn't part of the GB setup. He didn't win ABAs. He didn't wasn't on Team GB. He's had 12 amateur fights, and listen, on any other night, he might have stopped Kovalev in 2019. 2022, he gave a hell of a performance against Beterbiev. But again, Beterbiev power-wise is on another level. And then this guy that he fought on Saturday night is just in. He's an he's a destructive puncher. So take nothing away from Anthony Yarde, man. He's had a good career, and I do hope we get to see the Josh Buatsi fights and the Callum Smith fights because they're very good fights. The good fights for the British domestic scene, and personally, you can easily put them on a Riyadh season card. What do you do next if you're Benavidez, Ron? I mean, do you go up to cruiserweight and fight Zerdo Ramirez and maybe perhaps get a step closer to an undisputed fight with Jay Opatar? Do you think you should step
Ooh,
7-5?
man, yeah, that sounds quite tasty. Uh, you know, Jay Opataya, I mean, that would be a great kind of matchup. Depends what Jay Opataya does. Does he go up to heavyweight? So, then does he vacate those cruiserweight titles? So That would
This
be
is it. It's all about what weights people want to campaign at.
mm,
Do you know what I mean? I think that's what's sort of like the stumbling block.
yeah. Um, I'd love to see him in with more technical fighters like the Beterbievs and the Bivols, and I'd love to see that Canelo fight, the Pride of Mexico, and see, but I don't think Canelo would want that after coming out off a loss against Bud Crawford. So there's plenty of options there for him. He could still stay at that weight, maybe take on a mandatory if he wanted to, but I think strike while the iron's hot. The sky's the limit for this kid. He's 28 years of age. He's in his prime, and he's come off a real great result. And headlining a Riyadh season as well. So I'm sure Turkey El Sheikh's got a good plan for him.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm pretty sure Anthony Yarde can come again, and I'd like to see the fights with Josh Buatsi and Josh Buatsi and Callum Smith.
Not Lyndon R for four.
No, no, that's not me taking the piss, but
I'll leave it as that.
we
Okay.
don't need to see a full fight. I mean, look, Anthony Yarde versus Ben Whittaker. Why not?
Like that one.
Only
That's not.
time will tell, though. There's good fights to be made. Don't sort of, take your eye off of the British scene. There's good fights to be
What
made.
about Anthony Yarde faces the winner of Craig Richards and Dan Aziz?
Yeah, could
I
be,
mean, they're fighting
possibly.
in Ghana next, aren't
Yes,
they?
that's a
So,
good card as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's an interesting one. I mean, look, that could be a carrot. But look, we wish him all the best. And I remember, Anthony Yarde was one of the earlier boxers to kind of give you time of day, when you were
Absolutely.
starting out. And
Mm.
so, bear a lot of respect to him, and wish him a speedy recovery. And we hope to see him back in the ring soon.
Devin Haney become a free weight world champion by beating Brian Norman Jr. as well. Another fight, one of four title fights that was on the main card in Riyadh on Saturday night. Ron, the Dream, is now a free weight world champion. Moved up in weight after the win against Jose Ramirez. I believe it was on the New York City Times Square card, which was back in May. Um, I'm gonna obviously go first on this one, Ron.
Mm.
I've never seen a world title victory be more criticized in my life in boxing. I mean, like, you've kind of sort of gotten to understand what Devin Haney's all about. Now he's not going to be one of those fighters that's going to engage in a war. I mean, him and his father, Bill Haney, who I think is an unbelievable character in boxing, and I think
Mm.
is very well respected in my opinion. They have a
Mm.
game plan and they stick to it. The biggest question in this fight, going up in weight at to 147 pounds to fight an undefeated fighter in Brian Norman, is one, how would Devin Haney look at 147 pounds, i.e., in weight? And two, how will he handle the power of a 147 fighter? And we're not talking about any fight, we're talking about a guy that was the world champion at the time. And for me, he answered all of those questions. He looked physically more in shape, and he looked the best he's looked in a very, very long time, up at 147. His physique, I thought, was very good. And you want to talk about handling power? Well, he didn't get hit all night, but he's shown he's got power. That knockout in round two was
Mm.
knockout of the night, in my opinion. I mean, it was a brilliant shot. And I don't understand why there's people criticizing him. I mean, you've got to understand this is who Devin Haney is. This is how he wins. Floyd Mayweather wasn't the most exciting fighters, but he knew how to win. It's a results business, which is why I'm really, really annoyed. And I put my hands up. Even in the past, I've been a bit critical of Devin Haney sometimes. But the more you watch him, the more you realize, yeah, this is what you're going to get with Devin Haney. And I think when you go up in weight, it's all about finding your feet. This guy didn't do that. He went in, he fought an undefeated fight, and he fought a world champion, and now he's a free weight world champion. It could have gone horribly wrong. Look at Mikey Garcia when he went up in weight and fought Errol Spence Jr. Complete mismatch. So let's stop slagging the guy off and let's stop hating
Mm.
on him. Let's give him a bit of credit. What did you make of the performance and Devin Haney up at 147?
I think he looked more natural. I think, yeah. I mean, it was a great performance against, Brian Norman Jr. 24 years of age, undefeated, come off on the back of some really good results leading up to that fight. He was fancied by some. We don't know how Devin Haney, there was question marks over after that Ryan Garcia defeat and no contest. Obviously, it's been overturned, but that was brutal. He was dropped 3 times in that fight, and suspect of it, of the that left hook that Ryan Garcia caught him with on a number of occasions. Look, Devin Haney does get a lot of shit, but they do give a lot of shit as well. The father and son team. I mean, it reminds me of the Garcias, Danny Garcia and his dad. So I guess, his dad's going to be his biggest fan, and he's going to promote him, and he kind of tries to take the heat off of his son as much as he can, but take nothing away. I think he did what he had to do. Some people were questioning what did Devin Haney, what was left of him after that kind of performance against Ryan Garcia. But he showed what he's about, and looking from the crowd, it was our very own Conor Benn looking on with interest, and Conor Benn called him out a few times, and let's see if that fight gets made. You mentioned it in our last pod about that fight being made, and he's come across their win. Man, I'm all for it. I'd love to see that fight. I'd love to see Devin Haney here in a British stadium. That could be a headliner in itself. So, look, that 147 division is exciting as well. There's some really good fights there that could be made. So, well, let's look on with interest.
Absolutely. I think, as you said, there's still great fights there to be made. There's interesting fights to be made. I mean, there's obviously Barrios who's got a world title. There's Lewis Crocker's got a world title. There's Conor Benn and Ryan Garcia. There are good fights to be made. Jack Catterall as well is also up at 147. So it's not like there's fights out there for Devin Haney. But, going back to what you said about Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn being at ringside, Conor Benn pretending to fall asleep, I thought was absolutely hilarious. And Eddie Hearn's comments, I thought they were very, very harsh and very critical. Didn't Eddie once upon a time promote Devin Haney? I'm not being funny, or anything, but right, I
Yeah.
can get you trying to build a fight and everything, but this is a kid that's just gone up in weight, absorbed a lot of punishment in the Ryan Garcia fight. Yeah, I know he's fought after that, but let's give the guy a bit of credit. He's gone in there, he's dropped an undefeated world champion who is naturally the bigger fighter anyway, who's more,
Mm.
who's more experienced at 147 pounds, and one of the best leading promoters in the world right now, has done nothing but criticize him. And I wish I could put a microphone in Eddie Hearn's face right now and ask him some questions. I mean, because I just thought there was not a lot of praise on the night, and there should have been praise. But however, like you said, his father is his biggest fan, so he's obviously going to promote him and support him all the way he can. And we've seen Devin Haney likes to give it back when he's on the receiving end of it. So I just think, look, we've got to celebrate the fact that we've just had a freeweight world champion. He's still relatively young, and there's a lot of big fights out there to be made. Brian Norman Jr., I don't know what on earth was going on with him. I think once he felt that power, I relate back to what Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think that was the case with Brian Norman Jr. I mean, I had him winning a few of the later rounds, but I expected more from Brian Norman Jr. I was really excited to see him, and I didn't see that performance. I mean, is that the sign of a fighter who's, I don't know, maybe killing himself make weight, or is that the sign of a fighter that's just fought against a more superior fight? It could be a number of things, but what's the one fight you make next if you are Team Haney right now? Where do you go? I think because of Conor Benn falling to sleep and Eddie Hearn, you know, hitting nothing but criticism towards Devin Haney. I think if I'm Bill Haney right now, I'm on the phone saying, okay, well, you think we're boring and you don't think we're good to watch and we don't want to
Mm.
engage. Here's a world title, come and take it. So where my hopes are. I want to see Ben versus Haney next.
I'd love that, and they know that they're in the driving seat. They have the belt. Plus, can Conor Benn make 147? Like we discussed already. It's been 4 years since he last fought at that weight. Will he? He's fighting at 160 last, as we saw him, and and he had good power, fighting up that weight. So, um, There's also the Jack Catterall fight as well that he can have. Lewis Crocker, Mario Barrios. Does he want to unify? What does he want to do? I mean, he's in the driving seat now. I do want to say a little something about Brian Norman Jr. Look, he's 24 years of age. He came up against a classy operator in Devin Haney. Say what you want to say about him. Technically, a very good boxer, good slick skills. Uh, you know, you know, take your hats off to him, and he'll come back stronger. And if he's struggling to make weight, the 154 division doesn't look too bad to either. So if he's so let's see what the future holds for him. I'll be keeping an eye out for him. And I was hoping for a better showing, a bit more end-to-end stuff, but it wasn't. Seemed that maybe he was overruled by the whole experience of fighting someone of that level. But it'll be a learning curve for him nonetheless.
Exciting times for the 147 division. Don't forget, you've still got Manny Pacquiao in that division. We don't know
Oh
what he's
dear.
doing next, but he's still there though, and he's just come back from a long layoff for how many years, and he's got a draw against Barrios, the world champion. So if he's able to get a draw against Barrios, he's capable of still mixing it with these boys. Jesse Bam Rodriguez smashed Puma Martinez to become the unified world champion at super flyweight. It was the second fight of the night on the card, and it was a really, really good performance. Explosive is the word I'm going to use. What a performance from Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who right now, Ron, I think we both have to say is easily in the top five pound for pound list. One thing that I have to say about this performance, Ron, and whether you agree with me or not, is up to you. I thought it was more like a sparring session rather than an actual world title fight.
That's incredible. Yeah, yep, I totally agree with your comments earlier about, be him being a top five pound for pound. He's a pocket rocket, Anthony. That knockout, that little slip of the jab, and apparently, I was watching the highlights. It was as if he knew it was going to happen. He had a big smile on his face when he delivered that shot, and he caught him sweetly. And yeah, and everyone, on the side, I think Eddie Hearn got up out of his chair and was well done. That was a brilliant knockout. Was it knockout of the night? Maybe. Yeah, it's
Possibly,
definitely, yeah,
probably.
possibly,
Yeah.
possibly a contender.
Actually,
And
I thought Haney's was probably knockout of the night, but I say knocked
I
out
mean,
night. But yeah,
knockout, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
The what does I mean, in your opinion, what does Jesse Rodriguez do from here? Does he go up
So
in weight? Does he stay where he is? He's obviously
so
beat
he's
an undefeated fighter.
he's one win away now from an undisputed title. And obviously, the guys who are fighting for the IBF belt, that is the one that Bam doesn't hold, is Garcia and Tajiri in the super flyweight division. So I do think Eddie Hearn is a smart guy who want to get him. Like Eddie Hearn talks a lot about undisputed and how important it is to a fighter's career, no doubt. So I don't think Eddie Hearn's going to sort of push him that far ahead when he's literally one win away from becoming a unified champion. And Garcia and Tajiri do fight December 27th. So that fight can get made next March or April. But one of the most interesting points of the show was the little debate that the Zone broadcast team were having. Todd Grisham, Mike Coppinger, and Sergio Mora. Now, I think Sergio Mora was completely against it. However, Coppinger and Sergio and Grisham were both saying he's at 115 pounds right now. He's at super flyweight. He should go up to super bantamweight
Oh,
and fight the man himself, the monster Inoue. Now, um, I think for the neutral, I think that's a great fight.
oh my God,
I
I
do think
absolutely
there's
love
some
that.
vulnerability with Inoue. However, super flyweight to super bantamweight, I think it would be a massive ask.
I don't know what vulnerability you're seeing with Inoue, man.
Well, he got
Like,
dropped in his last fight. What more vulnerability do you want?
oh, come on, man.
He got dropped.
Oh, I don't know. I think I might need to quit this channel, man.
What, quick? No, but Ron, you asked me. I just told you you got dropped. So
You got dropped. I mean, that's
what?
fine. Okay. But look, jokes aside, that would be a super fight. I mean, just imagine, they need a massive stadium in Japan to fill that out. I mean, like that would be incredible. But I think you said it earlier. He's so close to the undisputed. Clean up at this division, and then possibly look at that fight. And Bam Rodriguez. I mean, how old is he? He's not age is on his side. You know, give it another year or so. Maybe that might work in his favor against Inoue.
I'll make a bold statement now. This time next year, that fight will be announced. That fight's going to happen next year.
I- No, no,
And that fight has to happen, in my opinion, because I think he'll clean up at bantamweight.
yeah.
And it just makes sense to go up all the way to super bantamweight, put on those extra few pounds and get in a ring with Inoue. I mean, Inoue's talked about fighting the likes of Tank in the past, and look, the smaller weights, Ron, they don't really catch the attention of the public, which I'm not one of those guys that discredits the smaller weight. I love watching the smaller weight fighters. I do think Bam Rodriguez the kid is special, and I do think we'll see the fight with um, Inoue 2026. We're talking about the first fight on the card, which for me was fight of the night. Mason Abdullah defeating Sean Noakes to become the lightweight champion of the world in what was a phenomenal fight. It was a fight of the year contender.
Mm.
Whether you was on the winning side or whether you was on the losing side, those two fighters, their stock has risen massively. But Ron, obviously, let's talk about Mason Abdullah, a world champion at the age of 21.
Wow.
Uh, you know, like I said, it was a great fight, and both fighters deserve a hell of a lot of credit. But has the US got a new star in its hands, Ron? I mean, we spoke a little bit about this, the US needing some more younger faces coming up into the sport. 21 years old, and now he's a world champion.
That's incredible. What a performance by both men. They did themselves both proud. Um, Abdullah Mason. I've been following him for a number of years. He's quite a fiery character in the ring. Back and forth. There are vulnerabilities to him as well. He's been susceptible. I think it was in his last fight or the few fights. He's been knocked down a few times, but that's his style. I think he's definitely a pound for pound kind of you know candidate in the future easily. Doing what he's doing at the age of 21, was it 2021?
21, yeah.
So yeah, it has incredible performance. But take nothing away to from Sam Noakes as well. Took that fight, and I think he gave a great account of himself. And yeah, so both fighters, I really enjoyed that fight. That was, I mean, what a way to start the evening, eh? With that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we got to mention our fellow Britishman, Sean Noakes. Such a gutsy performance. I think Francis Warren, who's his manager, was I think he choked up a little bit when he done an interview with IFL and just saying how proud of him he was, and they've nicknamed him the Maidstone Golovkin. He put up a really really good performance, and one of the most touching things about that show was I seen a clip of His Excellency Turki Al Sheikh going up to him after the fight and saying, "Listen, you'll be back on these Riyadh cards," because he put up a really good performance. And do you know what, Ron? Obviously, what we like to do on this podcast is talk about a fight, then talk about what's next. My answer is simple. Let's have the rematch in the UK. I swear to God, let's do it in the UK. Let's put that fight in London somewhere, Wembley Arena, maybe the O2. I thought that was a brilliant fight. One thing I loved about Sean Knox was he carried on coming forward. He was rocked a number of times,
Mm.
just didn't give up, and neither did Mason Abdullah. What are you saying, Ron? Rematch? Do you want to see it again, or different, different direction, both fighters, and then maybe build a rematch up?
I'd say the latter. I'm thinking about Noakes and how much what he went through, and he might need to recover and rebuild himself. But definitely want to see that fight happen again. Um, you know, but could that work in Abdullah Mason's career? He's 21, man, and he's putting in a performance like that. Um, just imagine how good he'll be in a 2 or 3 years. Like I said, I think he's a pound for pound, not in the near future.
Hmm.
He's coming up there. So, but yeah, I'd love to see that fight. I would love to rewind it back. But for fellow British guy, for Noakes, I want him to see him rebuild and and go from there, really.
He was unbelievably unlucky to lose that fight because all rounds were very close. I did have Mason Abdullah winning it by 2 rounds on my scorecards, but those rounds were very, very tight and very hard to close. But it was a really good performance. And listen, doors have opened now for Sean Noakes and, of course, the champion to Mason Abdullah. But congratulations to both fighters. That was what you call a world title fight. Ron, that's all we've got time for today on podcast 87. I can see the yawns are coming out left, right, and center, and the eye scratching is happening.